Hi there. We want to welcome everybody to Modern Workplace Fire Away Friday. It's Friday, everybody, and you have made it. I am your host, Michael Giannotti, joined with a co-host today as well. So today we are proud and happy to bring in, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dave, to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Dave Upton, fairly new to Microsoft. I just joined the team last month as a collaboration technology specialist, sharing the role with Mike, so helping customers out. I came from a large Microsoft enterprise customer where I spent the last few years basically implementing Office 365 and the modern workplace. So intimately familiar with Exchange Online, SharePoint, OneDrive. And then ultimately, I not only rolled out Microsoft Teams, but really it was a lot of focus on driving adoption, across the entire organization. So looking forward to spending the next hour with Mike and everyone on the broadcast. We have many things to announce and share with everyone. So Mike, I hand it back to you.
All right, so let me come on back here. Today we've got a packed day, so I'm pretty excited. We're going to be doing some trading off, myself and Dave, during the session. Just as a quick reminder, down below the video, so if you look down, you'll notice that there is a moderated Q&A panel where you can go ahead, post your questions. They'll come out anonymous, so if you want us to know who you are, put your name, you can say where you're from. Questions will not show for attendees. We'll see those. Both myself and Dave will be monitoring. I've actually got it over here on another monitor up front and center. So we'll see your questions. If you want to just say hi and give a shout out, we'd love to hear from you. And we can give you a call out. Last time we had the contest winner for furthest attendee was Mark Greth from Germany, and he was on a train watching us stream live on his iPad. So we'd love to hear from you. And I just want to encourage, as we go through today, if you have questions, we've got a lot of content. So this will not be a typical Fire Away Friday. We might be talking for a lot of it, covering the different content from the SharePoint conference. But we want to encourage you as we're speaking, as you have questions, concerns, objections, whatever the case might be, fire them away. We'll stop. We'll address them. We want to do that as we go through. I'd rather address your questions and stuff as we go and save more content for the next time than to let those slide. So be sure to do that. So moving on, and we're going to go to the full content only view. Today's agenda. We're going to start off with what's new in Microsoft's modern workplace. Again, the emphasis today is going to be out of all those announcements that came out of the SharePoint conference. We're going to run through those at a breakneck speed because there's so much to talk about and cover. We'll give commentary as we do, and certainly as you have questions and post those up to the moderated Q&A panel, we'll be taking a look and we will be stopping to address those as we go. So ask away as we do. Certainly once we finish that, we'll have time, a little bit of time hopefully, for a just blank slate open forum Q&A. This is where, if you have questions about anything around collaboration, we want you to ask. And I'm going to go ahead and put my video because I can't help gesturing. I was like, if you have questions, and then I realized none of you are seeing me. So if you have questions, that's the time about anything to ask. Everything's fair game, right? If you want to know how to collaborate on an Xbox to 365, let's talk. But we want to talk and field your questions, so feel free to, again, have anything ready for us at that time. If we don't know the answer, we'll follow up. We'll track that down for you and put that up. And just as a last thing, we will have wrap up and next session announcement. We do have the next one already scheduled and ready. But, I did mention at the last broadcast that we want this to be sessions that are by you and for you. And so I had some requests. We're going to change up the format a little bit, the next one, because I've gotten a number of requests. And indeed, last session, we got one around showing and demonstrating some things in Teams. We're set up and equipped to do that here. So, we're going to do the what's new, you're going to see a fourth bubble coming between what's new and open forum. So what's new moving forward will be like 3, maybe 4 things that we'll cover. We'll have it down to just the top things, top announcements, and then we're going to cover a topic, then open Q&A forum, and that's per request. And let us know. So I think the first one's going to be a piece on Teams because that was requested last session. So we're going to do that. And without any further ado, though, because I could keep yapping forever here, we got a lot to cover. So let's move in. And we are going to go to content only. So the first section is around enriching SharePoint content with intelligence and automation. There was a ton of announcements that popped out here. I could just read through, but a couple of quick things. As we look at, the different items that are listed here, these are just a few of the things. There were many more that came out. I do have a link, and we'll make these slides available at the end after this session, so you'll be able to download and click on the links. But a couple of things that they announced, that I wanted to hit on are as follows. So first of all, flow for cognitive analysis. So this is around processing text for sentiment key phrases, and that's important. Cognitive services, and also this includes translation or even moderation. But when we start talking about the implementation and the use of cognitive services, we're starting to see that leveraging of cognitive services that we have available in many different areas. You saw one of the first instantiations of it coming out in the new Microsoft Stream, where they're doing facial recognition and then bubbling that up. Now here we're going to go ahead and start to be able to look at text, get sentiment around that, sentiment analysis, and that allows us to do things with how we treat, alert. Think about the possibilities and things that you can do as people are posting and doing things, and actually be able to analyze a sentiment and then bubble that up, filter and view it, be able to alert people around things. There's a ton we can do around that. So that was announced. Row formatting, creating immersive formatting for any list or library with scripting. So if you want to do much richer views around those lists and have them be, again, more immersive in that view and how people view and interact with it, they said that'll be available later in 2018. AI for images. So being able to teach the cloud recognition around new objects for auto tagging. Again, we were doing things recognizing within video already in Stream, and now available is the ability for you to actually train the cloud to recognize objects, images, and auto tag those. So that's out and available. We've got new ways to create lists, right? Creating lists based on Excel, off of templates, and other type of lists. And so you'll see more around that coming out, but that's going to be available later in 2018, one of those upcoming features. Quicker list editing, edit the list content in place and paste data from other sources. Internally at Microsoft, I'm already getting to play with this with early access. So I can just go right up to the list and click boom, and I don't have to go into settings and all that good stuff, doing right in place, and then being able to copy and paste from other sources readily and have it not get all, kludged up. That'd be my best way of saying that, but that's coming for everybody in general availability a little bit later.
Yeah, it's kind of bringing the co-authoring to the editing of the list, right? Instead of the old checkout or click edit.
Wait a minute. Let's put you front and center with that. Go ahead and talk a little bit about that, because I think that's great.
Yeah, so if you think about how you used to have to edit a row, you had to click on the row, find the dots, click on the pencil, edit the row. You had the row locked until you were done editing. Going with the whole philosophy of this co-authoring, where you can, within Word, PowerPoint, Excel, being able to edit documents at the same time as your coworker. This will have that same ability where, if you're inline editing, someone could also be inline editing that exact same row. So on the list.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, when I think about some of this stuff, that's huge, right? Like I mean, just the ability to start to collaborate on this kind of content is big. All right, what else we got here? Link list items. We've had some basic list stuff, but now being able to connect them to Planner, Outlook calendars, that's kind of cool. Locations and more. So being able, again, to now more extensive. In the past, you could link, and do stuff to other lists, but now being able to really reach out into a broader ecosphere and pulling that data and linking that with your list coming as well. So that's going to be big for a lot of people. Lists, I guess it speaks for itself. Lists are huge and getting bigger, right? We're doing more by the power of the list, which is great because, and again, this is kind of an offshoot, but I'm actually, Dave and I, whoops, I put Dave up instead of me. There we go. Dave and I are going to be, he doesn't know it yet, but we're getting tagged to talk to a customer about getting rid of some of the third-party add-ons that they were using for Outlook and resource scheduling and leveraging the power of the cloud. So when we talk about, creating these very rich lists and being able to create an Office app to pull that in to Outlook as a part of a scheduling component, all kinds of cool things began to happen. So these kind of rich, again, pulling in other pieces like Planner and others, a lot of opportunity there. All right, moving on. Where are we at here? Link lists, real-time list updates. Again, being able to see that instantly without having refresh. In the past, as you're aware, data behind a list could have been updated, but until you refresh the list, you did not see that. But that just comes with all the new richer things that we're seeing with HTML and being able to deliver that within SharePoint. So you have real-time updates, huge, and much looked for and asked for by customers. Analyze list items with Power BI, connecting list items, again, to Planner and all these other things, and then being able to actually go in and use Power BI to run analysis and report off of that. Just extending it again, we're just getting into this whole rich ecosphere of pulling and then visualizing and pushing data. Just another great example of where some of that's going. Building Microsoft Flow workflows with Visio. I don't know about you, Dave, but I thought that was cool.
That is pretty cool.
Right. So, we've had in the past being able to do some things with Visio, but going in, both of us, in our past lives, we worked with IT and we would diagram and visualize in Visio. Now being able to go in and actually build out a workflow, a visual workflow, that's pretty cool. And they're saying that's going to be available July of 2018. So look for that. If you haven't seen that, be on the lookout. And then finally add a file upload to Microsoft Forms. That has not been there. It's typically been used around Q&A, data capture. But now being able to add file uploads, that's pretty cool. So all those links, of course, the link, if you don't want to wait for all this, you can absolutely go in and Bing, enrich your SharePoint content with intelligence and automation, and find a view to all this and more. But if not, if there's any questions around any of that, feel free to post those now. Let us know. And in the meantime, we'll head on over to the next. This is cool. This was a last minute throw, and I forgot how could I have forgotten this? So anybody that knows me and the clients I work with know I carry around a 360 camera / video cam everywhere I go. It's a Ricoh Theta S. It rocks, lets me they have the newer Theta 5 or something like that. Theta V, I forget the name of it. But and I'm getting pinged down in Skype by one of my SSPs. No. So at any rate, virtual reality, 360 immersive experiences are becoming much more prevalent. And, certainly there's been a lot that we've seen coming out with HoloLens, with Microsoft mixed this whole idea of mixed media and mixed experiences. But along with those announcements, then you get into how do you work with it. And one of the announcements that came out of the SharePoint content is around all of our innovations with SharePoint to transform content collaboration with mixed reality and AI. In the past, SharePoint served, as just a doc library, but it didn't serve to serve up and then help you to pull together and mix those experiences. That's where they announced something called SharePoint Spaces. There's some great videos out there on the internet. I'll make sure in my post afterwards, I'll go ahead and put some links out to that so you can take a look at what this thing looks like. But it is flipping killer. So, we've got this idea of now being able to leverage SharePoint in around a couple of scenarios where we're going to begin and host our immersive rich media experiences in SharePoint and then be able to access them from various devices. Here you see a woman kind of oblivious to her surroundings as she's immersed in an experience, but they can be 360 video. It can be imagery where you're looking at, think about plant inspection, right? Physical plant inspection and being able to, in 3D, 360 view, turn, interact, see that stuff. It can be representations in full immersive visual reality where you can interact with the content, work with it. But now having that hosted in SharePoint Spaces is something they're enabling and bringing forward. It is killer. Three, of the scenarios they talk about, first of all, recruiting and onboarding, right? So you have new people onboarding. And one of the criteria that as we look at millennials, Gen X, is people wanting to work in an environment that they feel is like, hey, these guys are moving forward. They are pushing forward. They're on the edge, cutting edge of things. So think about actually being able to bring that onboarding experience into kind of a 360 view. That is great. Storage and data implications. We asked about storage and data. They highlight in the article here over a petabyte of data like this already in SharePoint Online. Just not exposing the views to it. So, certainly as we look at rich media, it really depends. That's a great question. And I'll just break it out into two parts. One is imagery and the other is models. When we talk about virtual reality models that people might interact with, models typically use vector-based imaging technology, which scales up and down. The vectors are actually, they're mathematical configurations of an image, and then they're represented through that viewer. So those actually can be quite small, right? So, if you think about, if any of you are familiar with graphic editors, the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator. Illustrator, you create these vector-based images that can be super high resolution, but actually the file size might be less than a meg, but I could resolute it up on on New York Times Square, for example, on those giant things and have it in 3D, not in 3D, but on those giant billboards, be full fidelity and everything, and it'd be less than a meg in size. I mean, it's crazy what they can do in a vector. Having said that, imagery, where I'm taking a shot, or in my my thing's over there, my 360 camera or something like that, that's going to be much higher because it's an actual representation of the physical environment. And the better the resolution, the larger the graphics. So certainly, yeah, they're bigger. Having said that, Dave, what did we announce? I'm gonna put you on the spot. What did we announce recently around SharePoint Online for storage? Do you remember?
I do not know. No.
Ta-da! Well, recently we announced a 20, that's 10, so 10, 20x increase in storage space you get starting July 1st. We're rolling out. So we're taking that per person that was 500 megs per person plus the 1 terabyte. And now instead of it being 1 terabyte plus 500 megs per person for storage, we're we're making it 1 terabyte plus 1 terabyte. I think, wait a minute, what was it? Was it 1 terabyte? I got to pull that back up. I'm going to go and do a search. SharePoint increase storage. I'm using Bing here, folks. I don't have my little Bing. I believe this is it. Here we go. Yeah, and here's the chart. So they go, your base tenant is 1 terabyte. Per user, let's see. So where is it? Here we go. It's up from, it's 10 gigabytes per person. There we go. That's the 20. So 10 gigabytes per person instead of 500 megs is what we're giving people. So for example, go into that implication. If you are an organization of, let's say, 100,000 users, big company, right? They're going to have, starting July 1st, the 1 terabyte plus 10 gigabytes per person, which comes out to 1 petabyte, 1 terabyte, or 1,001 terabytes.
So that multiplier is by the license count.
Yeah, it's all by the license count. An org of, let's say, 5,000 users is going to have a total of 51 terabytes base storage. I mean, that's a huge increase in what we're allocating and providing to people. So, great question. There is storage implications, but we are scaling up to meet those needs. And there's no additional cost, right? As the cost of storage comes down, we bring the value to the users. So recruiting and onboarding, creating those rich experiences, that's one of those target scenarios. Learning, training scenarios. Again, if you need to train people around the use of technologies and using rich media, now you're going to be able to bring them into, even more immersive experiences than previously. So you could do a virtual walkthrough in 360, for example, of a remote location and the equipment there. And finally, product development. So this is where it gets really killer as people are actually working on these immersive 3D models that they've been working on in the past. Now we're going to be able to collaborate, facilitate the collaboration within SharePoint natively of that content. So a lot more there. I have 2 links here. The first of which is this link that goes to the article talking about this. I'll provide an additional link to a video showing it, but then the bottom link that you're going to want to grab, you can sign up for the preview. So late July, they're going to be starting to take people, and I think it was late July, into a preview around that. You can sign up now, get on the list, so as it's available for you to start playing with, you'll have access to it. If there's any other questions about this or anything else we've talked about so far, keep the questions coming, and thank you for whoever. Dave is replying to this post. So whoever it is, he's replying to you. So there we go. Next, what's new? Look at that. Look at that. He's putting up about he put a link to the person about storage. Good job. Let me go back to content only here. So what's new in Microsoft's modern workplace? So we had a couple of new announcements here around what's new for your intranet. This is actually a post by Mark Cashman, and there is a ton. I have 2 slides here worth of content. He has a lot more on his post, but a couple of the top things to talk about. Number 1, surfacing content within Teams, and there'll be more about that when Dave talks about Teams in a bit. But suffice to say, we are enhancing that experience between SharePoint and Teams, bringing them together so that you can get much richer and easier access to dropping things in Teams, pulling from SharePoint, from your legacy, even potentially from an on-premise instance. But we're going to talk more about that later, aren't we, Dave?
We are.
We are. So that's first off. Next, the SharePoint, with one click. So they did announce this. I thought they hadn't. But if you are in a SharePoint site, your group's enabled SharePoint site, and you want to hook it up to Teams, one click is coming where you'll be able to do that. And oh, there we go. Cool. I see he's responding to you. So with one click, you're going to be able to go in the lower left-hand corner of that SharePoint site and say boop and connect it to your team with or to link it up to a team. So that's coming. Group connected SharePoint team site updates. They have more coming around that. Let's see, new plan. Oh, the planner integration is pretty killer. One of the new attributes right off the bat in the drop down when you do new, where you can do apps, those kind of functions, is they now it's the idea of planner. So I'm seeing it in my tenant. Hopefully, if you're not already, you will be soon, where you can do in a drop down and actually spawn a planner right then and there, and then have that surfaced in your SharePoint site as a native element. So pretty killer because we see a lot of people wanting to, again, do things around the planning phases of activities that you're doing right within SharePoint. Modern team sites, available on premise with SharePoint Server 2019. We'll be talking more about this, talking about Server 2019, but that's coming on-prem, so the whole responsive design will be there as well. Some additional ones in this, inform and engage with rich and engaging organizational news and communication site updates. So they are updating some of the pieces around that. For example, a lot of that has to do with hub and interaction with some of the things with organizational news, where we're going to be able to now do polls of that and filters from multiple sources, so you can choose what sources you want to pull in and then filter that. And again, and also making it all more engaging. We're doing more with Yammer integration and bringing that in. There are some things that I cannot talk about today, but we'll be able to sometime in July when they make some of the public announcements around that. But let's just say Yammer getting a big boost, big jump up in what it can do. And I was waving my hands. You couldn't see that. Dave was laughing at me. But at any rate, yeah, some of that interactivity really getting hyped up on steroids. The other thing is now with that hub news web part, save for later. So how often have we gone through and said, oh my goodness, this is cool, this news, but I don't have time because I actually have to work. That whole, that thing gets in the way of us reading all the time, work, right? So you can click save for later, and then under the My tab where it has you highlighted in SharePoint, actually have that displayed up, and you'll be able to go back at your leisure and read those things, save news for later. Who'd have thunk? Let's see, app mentions and news comments showing up, that's going to be there as well. Kind of what I talked about, organizational news sources, deem specific sites as sources so that we can have official sources and, of course, be able to filter those. There's going to be some updates around page management, page approval, and some new things around audience targeting. This is one that I'm excited about because time and time again, back in the day, we had audience profiling on the pages. And it was kind of personalization where you could say, hey, we're going to have a web part, and you would have variations that we would target and profile, and certain people would see them, but it still, if you had too many, it became overkill on a page because it just hid those views. This is going days past with SharePoint on-prem, for those who remember. I had a client once do it caused their pages to take like a minute and a half to render. And it was like, well, how many things are you profiling? And they profiled everything. So
that's an interesting concept with the audience targeting, because, think about planner, right? You have your day-to-day planner, your people that are actively in there updating tasks, creating tasks. But from an executive level, if you were able to have that planner web part that surfaced just for your executives, that I don't need to see that on my website, on my SharePoint site, because I'm already in planner. I know what's going on. But from the executive view that doesn't want to get into the nitty gritty, but have that summary view, that's a great audience targeting capability.
That is exactly right. Yeah, I mean, to your point, that's exactly right. And we've had a ton of customers ask us, look, we want to do personalization. And so then they start going to third. Also, they've been going to different third, even just for like basic news and organizational pieces, right? So being able to do some of that audience targeting is big. And then because, you know, when they start doing like some of the third party add-ons, then they get caught in the whole, well, we can't, is it gonna break and blah blah, and we're not seeing caught. We want you to bring SharePoint. It's kind of like a steak. SharePoint, Dave, SharePoint, I just thought of this. I cooked steak the other night. I was grilling. SharePoint is like a fine steak. You don't want to hide it. You want it to, the flavor to stand on its own and come out. So we want to be able to do that, not you dump a bunch of third-party things to completely bury SharePoint behind their shell. So one of the things, audience targeting has been a big request, and having that, it's coming. There's more on the links. Again, you'll be able to go to them after we break here when we post the archive. I'll have that link with this posted. But that's that for this particular section. Next up, and I love this, so let's go to content only here. Introducing Microsoft Training Services. So I used to do a thing with customers where we did a proof of concept kind of thing where we would build a knowledge portal. And the idea of the knowledge portal was that you would go ahead and it was for training, you know, have Q&A, discussions, put content, but it was all manual build, and it certainly was not responsive design. Microsoft has announced, it's in preview, there is a link off of the article that I provide a link to below here that you'll have that allows you to sign up. We've had about 25 customers in preview going through requirements and building out. We're going to extend the preview where you can sign up to get access to it, and then it'll, of course, come out later this year to general availability. But it's today what we're looking at is it providing the following. So out of the box, when it instantiates, it's going to look what you see here in the picture, but it's going to deliver customizable, flexible content. So we're going to push content out there, make it, but then your admins can choose to hide or show content, right? So you can tailor to your needs what you're rolling out the content to make available. And again, it's going to be sized to your customer needs, right? So you're going to be able to go and create playlists of various content, customize that to what you want to do. You'll also be able to customize delivery and add in your own content. So for example, maybe you're using PowerPoint recording to create some rich media that's tailored to stuff particular to your org. You can dump that in there and expose that in this same piece. The idea of always up to date, not only will you see this initial push of content, but as we update that, your admins will have access to simply, you know, provide that view into your view of the training services or not, but we're going to keep updating as we provide new services. So they'll have that available. And then finally, we're going to have measurement tools that are available in there so that your own management can get insight into the training material, who's using what and consuming it, what type of things have been done and shared. And then again, being able to drill down and see who's doing what, when, where, and using what. It's kind of like an LMS, learning management system light, but we're going to bake it right into your 365 to help you with your rollout and deployments.
I love this because as a customer, I did exactly that. Built out a SharePoint site. You know, you're fishing the web to make sure you always have the latest content. You're pushing it out to the users, doing the customizations. This blends in nicely to just, you know, out of the box, be able to pick and choose what you're rolling out. If you're doing a phased rollout, you can pick the tools you're rolling out, provide the videos and the training up front. And like Mike said, you just do some customizations and maybe you change the workflow a little bit. Maybe there's a different request process that you have for the rollout. So this is ideal. Wish I had it years ago.
To me, this is huge, right? This is something that customers have been asking. They, you know, and a lot of you, a lot of customers, they're resource constrained. They don't have time to build this stuff from scratch and, you know, and then to maintain and update it. We're going to make it, you know, out of the box. You can customize it and tailor it as you want, but having this rich experience that's continually updating and building for you, I think is huge. So that was announced. It's coming. You'll be able to sign. You should sign up now. Again, the link here at the bottom of this piece will take you to the article that talks about this in much more, you know, in depth, where you can read about it. But it also on that article has a link where to sign up for the next range of preview. So if you have questions about this, I've actually been playing with it for a while internally, but certainly we can take your questions. You can post them here, and we're happy to answer them. Next up, as we move along, SharePoint Server 2019. So that was announced. And somebody said, thank you. Yes, somebody said no flash, right? Let me say it now. No. How do I can't even do the symbol. No, stop, no go. There is no flash. Yeah, we do. So for all video now in our system, we use HTML5 plugin free. It's MP4 on the back end, but we use plugin-less video delivery and streaming. So when we say, when you ask if there's flash, no flash. Not only no flash, but ready, Dave, blast from the past. No Silverlight.
Silverlight.
Yes. No Silverlight. Let's take a moment of silence.
There's no hand symbol for
Silverlight and for Flash. Rest in peace. So yeah, we're not. Neither one of those will be there. It's MP4 delivery. Thanks. Yes, you're welcome. I don't want anybody stressing over that. Yeah, Flash is dead. Long live HTML5. So we're out of those days. All right. If there's any other questions, feel free to post them. But in the meantime, on to SharePoint Server 2019. So I like this. A modern platform for choice and flexibility. So SharePoint 2019 is coming. You'll be able to download the preview shortly of that and start playing with it in your own organization. A couple of things though, you know, again, it will never have all the full breadth of capability of SharePoint Online, because we're tying in a lot of those cloud services online that you can't necessarily do here. But we do have organizations who have legacy installs of SharePoint and they want to update and keep those up to date, who have other content they want to store behind their firewall for whatever reasons, but they want a more modern. So SharePoint 2019 is coming. A couple of things that are coming that are important. Number one, modern sites, as I mentioned earlier. So having, you know, both for pages, lists, libraries, this whole, responsive design, modern rendition that can easily lay out, you know, they're showing in the graphic here, both a laptop and a phone. That just having that baked right in without you doing anything, that is coming to this new version of the server. The updated new team news and being able to do things with news like you've been seeing, we're bringing that to the server as well. Communication site templates, that's been very popular with SharePoint Online. Again, a template, boom, spinning out a communication site that has that responsive design. It has the hero parts and all the other capability. That it will be delivered as well. The new updated OneDrive Sync client. The Sync client. If you're doing OneDrive on premise, that's available. So Dave?
So will I need to have two OneDrive Sync clients like I have today? I have my modern OneDrive Sync client that runs for online, and then I have my other Sync client that does my on-prem syncing? So
that is a great question. So number one, this is kind of like, do you remember the video, the movie Highlander?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the tagline to Highlander there?
I do not.
Oh, come on! Highlander, there can
Only be one.
Yes! Bing! there can only be one. So if you're going to have
no more double
OneDrive
clouds
for
in my tray.
Huh?
No more double clouds in my tray.
Yeah. There can only, so number one, from a client standpoint, we have, the single bits client. But the other thing is this: if you're going to have a OneDrive, your users can't have have a OneDrive instance on-prem and in the cloud. If you're setting up a true hybrid, you're going to do either or for your users, right? They're not going to have two instances of enterprise OneDrive. Just from a practical standpoint, you'll make people go batty, and we don't want that. So we're not going to have that, but if you want to keep that on premise and then have that, but there are some, and before people start salivating and getting overly excited about that, there can be logistical issues around OneDrive on premise. And we were talking, Dave and I beforehand, a little bit about this, but it's one thing if you want to keep it on-prem, that's fine, but you need to keep in mind, number one, you're going to incur the storage hits. We give you unlimited in the cloud. You're going to have to count for that within your own. You're going to have to scale and do all that and the costs around that on-premise. Number two, Dave, what happens if somebody's mobile?
Yeah, you're not going to get to it unless you're somehow syncing it to your phone. And even more importantly, the backup and restore, right? You get that 30-day backup in case you have malware that encrypts your OneDrive. You can go back to yesterday. Would you have that on-prem?
Yeah, I mean that's all great stuff, right? Because that's stuff you have to account for again on premise, and and going back even to the mobile, if you want to enable that mobile, then it means I have to reverse proxy publish or get kludgy VP. I mean, really, you're going to have to reverse proxy publish, which now you said we want to keep it on-prem because we think we can do security better on-prem, but now you're going to open up another point of entry. So, it's all weights, right? You got to weigh and balance. So, but it is there for those who have a need and who can account for it and want to do that. That's been asked for. So we are providing that. They're also going to do with this, we're going to see improved hybrid support and scenarios. So they're going to do more around hybrid integration, like we talked about. For example, you might want to add stuff to an on-premise instance into your teams, just like you'd add SharePoint in the cloud. So improving some of that experience coming. New developer options are coming. And finally, support for Power Apps and Flow. So that is all there as well. I think this is my last one before we hit on Dave's. If there's any questions, we've been hitting a lot, feel free to post them. And we'll talk. I know we've been covering a lot of content. But finally, my last piece here is around some of the new multi-geo capabilities for SharePoint Online are coming. So that's in selective preview. We have a select group of some very large accounts that had a need around this request. So we're going into preview around that. Then around GDPR readiness, there is the new GDPR dashboard in Office 365 that helps around a couple, three main areas: discovery, protection, and support. So first of all, discovery, helping you to identify content, personal data that you have and where it resides, that whole right to be forgotten. I guess it's kind of like David Copperfield saying poof and you disappear, but disappear from the cloud. So being able to discover that information and act on it's important. Manage, governing how the data is used and accessed. I forgot protection, some of the security controls, giving you a highlight with the GDPR focus around that. And finally, support all the documentation, because I do want to say this. We have a lot of clients asking Microsoft, tell us exactly what we have to do to be GDPR compliant. And here's the issue. If you've read the GDPR documentation, it's great broad guidance at this point. So there's not a lot of particulars on different pieces. So for example, it says, the right to be forgotten, but then it says for organizations, if it causes undue hardship, that may be an exemption. Well, undue hardship. Dave, can you define for me exactly in terms, technically, what we should do in SharePoint what an undue hardship is?
No.
No, right? This stuff's it's pretty general at this point,
Right.
right? So we know there's going to be case law and lawsuits and things that'll come out. Right now, a lot of it is there's the organizational stuff for enterprises, and then there's the direct targeting of really the online social forums, where they are getting very particular very quickly. But we'll see as case law and other things, some of that will then further flesh that out. But in the meantime, we'll keep that documentation one-stop shop where you can get to all of it for the guidance to help you be, as your own legal and security folks interpret, so you can be GDPR compliant. Anything you want to add here?
No, I'm still thinking about what I want to do with the hardness question you had. Maybe run, call my lawyer. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's about it. It gets pretty nebulous there. So the last piece, this is Dave, and then just wide open forum.
Yeah, and this might look like a short list, but it's not a short list. First thing I want to point out, if there are obviously Teams admins on the call, obviously, Mike and I are doing this to keep everybody aware, but definitely want to point out that link at the bottom. And if you just shorten it up a little bit more to go right to the Microsoft Teams blog. As an admin, this is how I stayed up to date. They do a monthly release of new features for the June. Obviously, you can go back, and even if you didn't catch any of the earlier presentations, go back and look at what some of the other ones are. You may have missed out. You may not have even known a feature rolled out. Definitely valuable. And then they do highlight specific areas. So you'll find videos just on specific topics, so you can dive into it and get a little bit more knowledge. But let's go down this list. So the first thing, if you go to that link right there on that slide, it's going to take you to very first thing is a video that Ann Michaels and Jeremy Chapman did that will walk you through a lot of these features as well. So definitely want to highlight that. So if you want to get somebody else's perspective on it, I advise go into that after this. First one on the list, direct routing is now in public preview. So this is something that you would need to sign up for. If you remember back in December, Teams, if you were running it, introduced a calls feature on the left-hand side where you could actually make phone calls. So this was part of the migration from Skype into Teams. Well, now they're actually allowing multiple countries to connect right up to the telephone system. So you can get that phone calling a direct route through Teams now. So that's a big improvement, and this will just constantly be increased, obviously, in functionality. Going down the list, greater access to SharePoint document library files inside of Teams. You'll notice if you click on the add a tab, you can actually link right to a document library or a list right to a SharePoint site. So this is a vast improvement. This is kind of what Mike had hit on earlier. Jump in there and start looking at that. The delegate features within Teams. This is rolling out. So if you go into your team settings, when this hits your tenant, you'll notice within the general that you're going to actually have the ability to set a delegate that can make and receive phone calls on your behalf, assuming that you have calling turned on. Working our way down, collaborating more effectively. Microsoft Remote Assistance, collaborate in mixed reality, and Mike kind of hit on this with his mixed reality. They're bringing that to Teams. So, having a call with a HoloLens right within Teams. Create the team using previous one as a template. Now, this is one that I love, right? I've created many teams in my past. Actually had a process where we had to manually create teams through an approval request. So it wasn't necessarily open to anyone to be able to create their own team. And part of that, was setting it up exactly how we wanted, going through the settings and making sure you had things checked off for permissions. Well, now you have the ability to pick a team that exists already. So maybe you want to set up your project team. Maybe you have a couple channels for artifacts or meeting minutes, certain things that you have already predefined. Well, now you can actually pick that team as a template, and it'll recreate those channels, tabs, team settings, and even or manage the members. So maybe it's just a project. You create multiple projects with the same people, and You want to just, instead of having to go through adding all those people back in, you just pick the team and say that I want to bring all the members over from that team as well. So great new feature. Customizing and extending third-party apps and processes. This is a couple things with this. It allows developers to actually add in their own apps, specify, and that this hits on a couple different things that there's going on with third-party apps. But you can build your own apps. You can add them in. You can specify who you want to be able to access that app, whether it be just in your team or maybe the whole tenant. We have apps in chats. So you're allowed to build.
Like cat in hat? Apps in chat.
This is coming soon to developer preview. So again, I'll point out, go look at the blog. I don't know if Mike called them all out, which ones are in preview or not, but this allows you to build those apps and put them in your one-on-one or in group chats. We have tailored teams created through new Teams APIs in the Microsoft Graph. If you haven't explored the Graph, it's got a large amount of APIs that you'll be able to get in and program against, creating a team, deleting a team, adding members to a team. If you're familiar with PowerShell, you can also do this through PowerShell as well, but this is just extending the Graph that didn't have this functionality before. So, they released the PowerShell back, I want to say around the end of the year as well. But now they're obviously bringing a lot of that same functionality to Graph because that has become the API of choice. What else we have? Cutting down on time here. There's a lot of things on this list. Enterprise sharing through Teams apps, catalog. This is kind of what I was hitting on as well with the third-party apps. The customizing and building your own apps and making them available. Again, specifying that you want them available to a specific team or to the entire tenant. Definitely want to hit on the mobile features that are coming to Teams. And one of these is extremely exciting, but hit it off, new meeting capabilities on mobile. So being able to join meetings and have them either call you back or join via VoIP. This is huge. And then there's some even additional features coming out soon, which will allow you to, if your call quality on VoIP is not going so well, it might prompt you and say, do you want to switch over to a phone call? To allow you to actually cut over so that you can actually continue that same call. It'll do a quick disconnect and reconnect. You don't have to do much other than just answer the question. This is one that I love though, sharing content and control in presentations. When I saw this demoed, I was immediately excited about it because how many times as an IT person, you're doing a demo and you really want to show off that mobile app, and there's really no way to do that unless you have some sort of mobile screen sharing plug-in capability on your software on your computer to make that connection. Well, this now, if you joined in a team call from your mobile device, and yes, you can share PowerPoints and all, but even being able to do that training where you're able to walk through the Teams application with your users, or maybe you're going to walk through a PowerPoint presentation or some other applications, it will share your entire mobile device right through the Teams application. So instead of an executive going into a meeting and having to bring their laptop or their iPad, or they could just do it on their phone where they join the meeting and they share a presentation right off of their mobile device. So to me, that one is a huge win. Was that all we had on there? Take a course, learn how to enable Teams. So there's a edX course, and again, go to that link that's provided there on this slide. And you can also get to the same topic, and there's a link within this page. It takes you right out to the edX course. That'll also get you, more training on this. And I don't know if anyone's on the call from the learning environment, so an institutional, or there is a Teams version of that's built specifically for the educational industry. But I highly recommend, again, going out to this blog if you are. Check out some of the information that they've done and features they've implemented for the institutions, the learning institution, colleges and schools, because phenomenal where they're taking this. It just brings a whole nother perspective to the use of Teams. So we have some questions, and Mike's been hacking away here at the answers. So
yes, we do. We have a couple. So the first goes, do you have customers today who are in Office 365 and fall under GDPR? I guess that gets into a lot of times we hear, excuse me, from customers who, when they're under different kinds of compliance, they wonder, am I the only one doing this? So Yeah, we absolutely do. If you go to the Trust Center, we actually have different cases cited, but we have quite a few. Just as an example, right here in the Northeast, I mean, the customers that myself and that Dave and I are both servicing, working with, we have quite a few who are multinational, and they're in Europe and others. And so GDPR has been high on their minds for a while, and they wanted to make, and they're in the cloud, they're in 365, and some very large 100,000+ organizations. So quite a few. So the short answer is yes. If you're looking at it, don't get nervous. You will not be the first. And I would dare say that when it comes to GDPR and other areas of compliance in the cloud, Microsoft really is leading the way. Just go to our Trust Center and you can see all, and I'll provide a link to it. You can see all the different certifications we already have, and I'll provide a link to the content around GDPR. I think the next one, on the connection to a library, will you be able to connect to SharePoint on-premise? Are there restrictions on the version of SharePoint? You want to tackle that?
I'm not honestly, if it's a web page, I don't believe that there would be, because ultimately you're connecting to a website. There are some considerations that you want to obviously put in place, because if you think about a teams you can access from a mobile device or any device from anywhere, anytime, right? If you have it enabled to allow that. So if you think about your SharePoint on-prem though, those are usually behind a firewall, locked down. You either have to VPN in or be on site. So if you're allowing your users to be on Teams from anywhere and they're trying to hit a list that's on-prem, you have to either open up, that connection to that, set up proxy. So that is a consideration you'll have to make. Otherwise, they're going to get an error, obviously, that they don't have access to that SharePoint list. From a version, Mike, I'm not sure if you have more details on a different specific version, but again, to me, assuming it's a website, I don't see where the difference would be.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think if you're talking about versions, at least the way I've seen, because the parts aren't just doing an iframe, they're actually pulling a specific view out that's enabled. So I would have to verify this, but I'm gonna go out on a limb, and say probably at least 2016, just because of the framework as far as how they're graphically, how they're rendering pages and lists and sites. So
we'll definitely get a more specific answer before we reply.
Yeah, I mean, my gut is it's got to be, it's going to have to be a modern, either 16 or 19, but we'll have to verify that. I do know it's not doing a simple iframe where we're just giving like the web URL.
Right, using a website tab.
Getting all the Chrome. So it's pulling the specific view out minus all the Chrome.
Yeah. All right, we got 1 more minute, 1 more question here. Will we be able to script the whole process of creating a team? I can tell you from my experience that I was able to script this through PowerShell in the past. So even when they rolled out the first PowerShell API, you could go through the process of just creating the group and adding the team features to it all through PowerShell. So that was not a problem in the past. I haven't done it through the APIs of Graph, but again, my assumption would be yes, you would be able to use the Graph API, given that those features are now rolling out that allow you to create it, manage the members, add channels. I will be testing that myself personally, so we'll definitely get back to you on more details, or if there's putting out more documentation, we'll include any links to those at the end.
Well, we're right up pushing on the end of the hour. If there's any other questions, feel free to post them, and we'll either get to them live now and run over a bit, or we can post those certainly in the follow-up. But first of all, I want to thank you for joining. I want to thank making you the primary. I want to thank Dave.
Thank you.
So the two of us will be, facilitating and doing this moving forward. But thanks for joining for today. Our next session will be June 22nd. So that's 6/22 on 2018. We'll be broadcasting at 12 noon again. For the next session, we'll post out ahead of time the agenda, but we're going to have a topic, and we're going to have something where we actually demonstrate Microsoft Teams during that piece per request from the last one. We've had quite a lot of things that we talked about today that I'm sure people would like to actually see demonstrated. So we'll start doing that and taking requests around that. But the next one, look forward to on the 22nd, we'll have 3, maybe 4 things that we'll cover as far as top news that's happened. Then we'll get into a presentation piece and Q&A. So, and that's by request. So we'll be doing that. Today's video, once we're done, I'll be posting this out. Certainly Dave will have option to post out as well. We're going to post the video up. I'll have that available on LinkedIn as well as the PDF version. And we'll do a couple of links that we mentioned that we would have as well. And if you want to follow us, talk to us, make requests for future broadcasts, specialty ones that maybe are completely focused on a topic, etc. You can find both Dave and I online at LinkedIn. You can find me at linkedin.com/in/Mike Giannotti. You can find Dave at linkedin.com/in/Dave R. Upton. And we would just love to hear from you. But with that, without further ado, this is Mike Giannotti and
Dave Upton signing off. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day, everyone. Take care.